here I'll just pull up what Donald Trump had to say about this deal with Ansar Allah, saying that there has been a capitulation by Ansar Allah itself, that they'll stop attacks on American shipping, that they're giving up.
We had some very good news last night. The Houthis have announced that they are not, or they've been announced to us at least, that they don't want to fight anymore. They just don't want to fight. And we will honor that. And we will stop the bombings. And they have capitulated, but more importantly, we will take their word. They say they will not be blowing up ships anymore.
And then, as that was happening, we had the announcement about the downing or the sinking of another fighter jet. The U.S. has lost another F-18 Super Hornet off the USS Harry Truman. It has sunk to the bottom of the Red Sea. All of this happening virtually at the same time, Professor Marandi. So what's your assessment? What is going on here? How does this fit into the larger picture that we've been covering?
I think it's pretty clear that this is a significant setback for the United States. Trump, obviously, as he always does, he makes things up. I think it's quite clear that you have a very politically aware audience, and your two other guests are. I've noticed before that they're always more precise than me, and they know much more detail about events, so they could do a better job in explaining. But it's quite clear that Ansar Allah, after the ceasefire, Netanyahu, he reimposed the starvation siege, and Ansar Allah gave a warning, stating that they gave him 4 days, maybe. Now you can correct me if I'm wrong, to open up the Gaza Strip to aid. Otherwise, we're going to shut down the Red Sea again. So they even gave the Israeli regime and Netanyahu time to rethink the siege. They did not change their policy, and Ansar Allah restarted their siege on Israeli regime ports. So the siege had nothing to do with American ships. It had nothing to do with European ships. It had nothing to do with any ships that were not related to Israeli regime. Now, the Americans, Trump, decided to teach everyone a lesson and teach Ansar Allah a lesson, and he and his Secretary of Defense made it clear that they're going to finish the job and get rid of Ansar Allah. And for the last few weeks, that's what they've been trying to do. We saw a large number of very expensive drones downed, very important drones. Those are the drones that are used to find and immediately target commanders, sensitive equipment. They, in my opinion, they're even more important than the F-18s, because the F-18s have to take off, go to Yemen, bomb a particular site. These drones, which are almost as expensive when they're fully armed as an F-18, they are constantly monitoring and seeking targets so that they can immediately strike them. So Ansar Allah has been downing these drones. They've been downing these jets. They've been harassing ships during this period of time. The Americans have been constantly bombing. We saw from, I think, the Wall Street Journal article that their heavy bombings with B-2 and B-52 bombers coming all the way from Diego Garcia, which is very expensive, by the way, to carry out these bombing strikes. And since out of fear, the aircraft carriers in the Red Sea are also very far away from Yemen, the airstrikes from there are also expensive. So the Americans used those heavy bombers, the B-52s and B-2s, to bomb Yemeni military sites. The Wall Street Journal effectively admits that it was not successful. And the Americans, of course, and now the Israelis too, they basically bombed civilian targets and slaughtered ordinary people. They bombed factories. They bombed apartment blocks. but they had no success, and they could not stop the missiles, they could not stop the drones, and they obviously couldn't stop the missile that struck the Ben Gurion International Airport. So when Trump says Ansarullah, or what they call the Houthis, when he says that Ansarullah has capitulated, in fact, he's capitulated. And Ansarullah, as we've gone back to where we were before Trump decided to attack Yemen. In other words, ships, as we speak, in accordance as before, Israeli ships are blocked from going to or leaving Israeli ports, and other shipping that is not related to the Israeli regime can go through the Red Sea as normal. So basically, Ansarullah has scored a major victory. The United States has been humiliated. Trump has been humiliated. And I think it also has broader significance, because that means it shows that there are times when the interest of the United States is not precisely the same as that of the Israeli regime when things get tough. The second is that Ansarullah will be able to continue punishing the Israeli regime more easily. And also, I think it teaches the United States a lesson. It may be a lesson that they don't take into consideration the way they should, but it teaches them a lesson that if they cannot defeat Ansarullah, then they should not even think about attacking him.
Well, I agree with all of that. What I want to add is to pay tribute to the people of Yemen who have sacrificed so much in solidarity and in defense of Gaza, to the point where truly Yemen now is the hope of forcing Israel to end this genocide, because all of the regional Arab regimes, the Europeans, the United States, are either completely passive or actively supporting this genocide. And Yemen has taken a stand to enforce a blockade on Israel to try to prevent it from continuing this horrific, escalating mass murder, this final solution that Israel has announced its intention to pursue in Gaza. And I think that the analysis that Trump backed down is absolutely the correct one. And as Dr. Marandi said, Yemen never wanted to pick a fight with the United States. They never said they were going to target American ships, except in response to U.S. attacks on Yemen, which started in the current phase under the Biden administration. But of course, we know that Barack Obama first launched a genocidal war against Yemen, along with U.S. proxies in the region, the Saudis and the Emiratis, in 2015, causing the worst humanitarian crisis in the world until the genocide in Gaza. And of course, the humanitarian crisis in Yemen continues and is likely to be worsened by the revenge attacks that Israel, apparently with some U.S. backing, has been carrying out against Yemen, for example, attacking the port of Hodeidah in recent days, attacking equipment and infrastructure that is used to import food into the country. So this is the typical Israeli method of targeting the weakest, targeting civilians, because Israel is unable to engage with the people in the region. And so I'm sorry, Danny, I wasn't sure if I had lost you or
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, yeah. And what I also want to say, and I'm eager to hear Dr. Marandi's view on this as well, which he started to allude to, which is that U.S. and Israeli interests are not always the same. And here I want to focus on a particular point. I think it's fair to say that the United States will do whatever it can to prevent Israel's outright defeat. We saw Joe Biden mobilizing multiple aircraft carriers and sending most of the US anti-missile batteries to the region, which were not very successful at defending Israel. I personally witnessed on October 1st last year, I was in Amman, Jordan, and I watched the sky light up with hundreds of ballistic missiles from Iran heading towards precisely targeted military and intelligence and terrorist targets in Israel. And it was very clear that that wave of missiles was not effectively stopped. I saw with my own eyes some interceptions, but they were very few compared with the sea, the river of missiles that was going overhead. And what we're told by Iran, and there's no reason to doubt this, is that this was only a fraction of what Iran was capable of. It was more than what Iran launched in April of last year, but much less than Iran is capable of launching should a full-scale exchange take place. We have to assume that the Yemeni missile, which hit Ben Gurion Airport or the direct vicinity of Ben Gurion Airport, which of course is one of the most heavily defended pieces of airspace on Earth, not just defended by Israel's own systems, the Iron Dome and the Arrow and David's Sling and all these different jointly developed US-Israeli systems, but presumably by US Patriots and THAAD missiles that are not just located in Israel itself, but in neighboring countries that are effectively allied with Israel as proxies of the United States. And so if that Yemeni missile could penetrate a single missile, so we're not talking about a situation where the Israeli air defense system was saturated with the missiles. We're talking about one missile that was able to get through all these defenses. Then there must be a sober realization in the Pentagon, in the White House, that were a full-scale exchange to take place between Iran and the United States, that would involve Israel, that would involve the targeting of US proxies in the region, whether their military infrastructure or their oil infrastructure, would be catastrophic, would be would exact a price from the United States and the world economy. Dr. Marandi has talked about this many times, that the United States was not willing to bear. And so to bring it back to Yemen in closing here, and forgive me for going on, remember that when Trump launched the attacks on Yemen, he explicitly said, this is a warning to Iran. So this was supposed to be a demonstration to Iran. Look what we're doing to Yemen, and you will be next. Well, you failed in Yemen, which presumably has a fraction of the capabilities of Iran. And so what does that tell us about the US willingness and capability to engage in a full-scale war with Iran, where it has no interest in doing so? The US has no interest in doing so. Only Israel and its fanatical supporters in the United States have an interest in doing that. And it seems that there's a sobering up in Washington that that war would be of no benefit to the United States. At least I hope that's the case.
Yeah, Lowkey, I want to get you in here and just show this first so you can react to it all. It says, this is the Times of Israel. They reported that during this announcement of the so-called truce with Ansar Allah, the strikes on Israel are going to continue, according to Ansar Allah. But this is the key thing. Israel was caught off guard, so reinforcing Ali's point. But I want to get your assessment of the situation, your reaction, Lowkey.
Well, an interesting context to all of this is that a few days ago, Mike Waltz, the former national security advisor, has been pushed out of his position due to what seems to be him going behind the Trump administration's back and working closely with Netanyahu on the purpose of persuading Trump to go to war with Iran, basically at the behest of Israel. So there seems to be some upset in the Trump administration with that, and that has led to Mike Waltz being pushed out of that position. On the other hand, what you have to also take into account is the other nations in the world who are targeted by US imperialism have watched carefully what these heroic fighters who represent ultimately the pinnacle of humanity today in Yemen. You are talking about the best of humanity. And when they were able to penetrate that Israeli airspace and strike Ben Gurion and go through the much vaunted THAAD defense systems from US arms companies, that is a lesson to all of the other governments that are targeted by imperialism in the world and by the US, that actually the saying, the mosquito can sting the lion's eye, or the knuckle of the tiger can be stung. You know, the United States is not all powerful and invincible in the way that it likes to portray itself. And ultimately here, you have an airspace that is also defended partially by the UAE. And I'll explain what I mean by that. The company that manages Israel's airspace is Highlander Aviation. That is an Israeli company, which is partly owned by Edge Group. That is a UAE state-owned arms company. So the myriad of forces at work here against the Palestinians, and actually the true role of the axis of assistance in this war, will become clearer and clearer as time goes on. But of course, I would echo the points made so far, and also give my salutations to the people of Yemen, who, as Ali said, have gone through their own genocidal war. Over 300,000 of them killed in that war. The US are using the same target bank that the Saudis seem to use during that time. And we have seen the survivors of genocide reach out their arms to grab on to the current targets of genocide in Gaza. And it's a truly touching feeling to look upon these people who have just had civilian targets bombed in Yemen and saying very clearly to the United States, we will not let go of Gaza. You know, think about that. And that's not on the level of an imposed policy. That is an organic policy, which is felt by the people of Yemen. And also it's a notion which I would say is felt by a majority of humanity today. When I walk the streets on a day-to-day basis, I come across people and meet them from all walks of life, from all different professions, from all different political persuasions even now, who say very clearly that they are dead against this genocide. This is the high-tech Nakba that the Nakba of 1948 was a precursor to. This is Zionism boosted, turbo boosted with technological advancement. And what they're hoping to achieve in Gaza is a displacement of people at least double the size of the Palestinians displaced in the Nakba. We also have seen Israel transform really into a blatantly unambiguous imperial power in the region. When they can bomb a ship off the coast of Malta, they can bomb Lebanon, Yemen, and Syria all on the same day, Israel is undoubtedly an imperial power. Now, there are those who count themselves really among our number, but say, well, you know, it's Israel is a British and US attack dog. And of course, that has historical basis for what they are saying. But today, when you see the National Security Advisor essentially recruited as an asset of the Israelis in the US government, where is the activities of the British lobby within Israel today? What you have is a British embassy in what they call Israel. But guess what it has in it? It has in it something called the UK Israel Tech Hub. It's funded by the British government, but staffed entirely by former Israeli intelligence personnel and headed by the former Director General of the Israeli Finance Ministry. These are former Israeli intelligence personnel working inside the British Embassy, inside the political entity of Israel. Their objective is to obtain public sector contracts in Britain for Israeli tech companies. And guess what some of those public sector contracts have been? The company that hacks phones in this country for the British police, Celebrite. The company that records conversations in the Irish police stations, Nice Systems. These are the companies that have spread out across different societies and done very well off the neoliberal era. So I think there needs to be a rethinking of what Israel is today and what it represents. We can no longer simply focus on the Balfour Declaration, the British Mandate, to understand what Israel is. It is an imperial beast as of today, and it is attempting to completely redraw the map with a new Sykes-Picot. And we have to be prepared for that and also be clear-eyed in our analysis of that.